up, Beam Tribe? So in this video we're going to talk about movement versus exercise. So when most people hear the word movement, they think of exercise, and that's because our society has trained us to view movement through the lens of exercise, but in reality exercise is actually a very small subset or small subcategory of the greater realm of movement. So we can think about exercise, or we can define exercise as any physical activity that is planned, structured, repetitive, and has the goal or the outcome of improving or maintaining physical fitness. Whereas movement is just, when it boils down to it, it's just a change in shape. And that change in shape is how we interact with our environment. And so, it's how I would get up from sitting down and walk from A to B is just lots of different changes in the shape of my body. It's how I would pick something up off the ground. If I wanted to pick this up, change the shape of my hand. And even things like talking is just a change in shape of my voice box and mouth in order to express language. And so there's all of these things that we wouldn't necessarily count as exercise. So, even things like gardening and cooking and playing with your kids, they're all in the realm of movement, but they're not necessarily exercise. Whereas exercise, things we typically think of like bicep curls, deadlifts, squats, lunges, running, cycling, swimming, all of the things that you'd see the active population doing, they are all movement. So you can think of exercise as like all those things that fit into exercise is this small circle, and there's a massive circle of human movement potential that exercise doesn't cover. So what's interesting over time with our society is that we've started to become very exercise focused and very movement averse. And so we glorify things like big muscles and ultra endurance and ultra speed that we see a lot of the high level athletes doing, but we ignore or we avoid all of the little movements that actually would make us would maintain our health and longevity throughout a long period of time. And what this has led to is basically a new category of people that we call active sedentary people. So we used to think of people as either active or sedentary, black or white, yes or no. Did you exercise or not? Whereas now we're realizing that it's not enough to just do 30 or 60 minutes of exercise a day. You can't offset a full day of sitting or being static and sedentary. And so now there's people who believe they're active, but they're actually sedentary because the majority of their hours in their day, they're static. And so the reason that's an issue is, if to use the movement nutrition analogy, is that people, it'd be equivalent to, say, eating carrots once a day, every day, and that's all you eat. So carrots are great for you, and they've got lots of great nutrients, but they're not, you can't have that as a whole food nutritious diet. You need to have other foods in place, otherwise you're going to end up with deficiencies. So exercising once a day, usually in a small realm of movements that most people do in exercise, is not going to be enough to keep you healthy in the long term, and it's going to predispose you to things like injuries and overtraining as well. So what we need to do is use exercise as a great tool and a great supplement, but not as a replacement for our movement-centric lifestyle, which is basically where we've inputted and added a lot of movement into our day-to-day lives. That is just our default setting, or our habits throughout our life are very movement-based. And so that could be a really great one to start working on is just ground living, so being on the ground more, because when you're not in a chair and you're on the ground, it stimulates and promotes a lot of extra movement where you're having to shift your body around because things start to get uncomfortable. So things like that, things like walking to work or walking part way to work, or having a beam or a pull-up rig in your house so that it promotes movement. All of these things that you can do to create habits around movement, and then the exercise is really just a bonus. Then when it comes to exercise, it's about looking at it more as a movement practice than just like a workout. And we'll talk about that in the next video. See you then.